Hi! Welcome to another exciting edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name is Robert Winters.
Hello, Robert Winters. My name is Susana Segat, and we're so happy you're here with us tonight.
Yeah, we have a little bit of an absence here for the moment. We have
a special guest who hopefully is just caught in traffic and will be here very soon.
Right. So I guess in the
Until
meantime,
then,
we can either sing, dance, or give a few updates.
Well,
on
you can sing.
What's that?
I
No.
can dance. I do have some news.
Oh, please.
Do you know what today is?
Today is 1 week before Income Tax Day,
Yes.
and I haven't begun.
Cool.
Got to live dangerously.
That's not really what day it is, though.
All right, let's see. April 8th. I don't know.
Today. And it's really hard to explain it, so I'm going to have to do it very badly.
All right.
Today's Pay Equity Day.
Oh, they did the big signing at the White House today.
A big
Is that
signing at the
one?
White House?
The big signing, yeah.
Well, no. Pay Equity Day. This is hard to explain. So if you and I, a man and a woman, start a job January 1st,
Right.
you get paid the whole year long.
Yeah.
December 31st, you're done. You get paid for the whole year.
Right.
I have to work until today to make as much money as you did for those 12 months.
Well, then maybe that's the reason why today they chose, I think President Obama signed legislation doing something to bring us closer toward pay equity. That was the big announcement.
I think what he did was that he banned federal contractors from punishing people who discuss their salaries. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to have you call in and explain what else he did. But that you'd think that would have been something that would have been banned 30 years ago.
You'd think.
You'd think.
You'd think.
That
All
people are not allowed to discuss their salaries and they can get disciplined. But now, if you're a federal contractor, you have to be
Well,
progressive. See?
news for me. So.
This is what happened when our guests don't show up.
Well, actually that, and we subject you to lots of announcements about things. Right? So are we ready for Plan B?
Cool.
All right. So let me begin here just with a few kind of public meetings coming up. Big crazy issue of last year during the election season was the net zero petition. Was it a petition?
Oh, yeah.
I think it was a zoning
About
petition.
building and growth, right?
Yeah, it was a number of things that were, well, the details aren't so important, but what happened in the end is that the petition kind of went south. It didn't have enough votes, but the idea was something that people embraced. So ultimately, the city manager appointed what they called a net zero task force to sort of implement some of the worthy goals that everybody agreed with. So they've met, I think they met initially in December, and then once again at the end of January. They had a couple of workshops yesterday morning, this morning, and then they're having a meeting tomorrow, 6 to 8 at City Hall. Wednesday, April 9th is the Net Zero Task Force meeting. So for those of you who may have had an interest in that or still retain an interest in it or would like to develop an interest in it, I encourage you to go to Sullivan Chamber in City Hall on Wednesday, April 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. To pick it all up. Oh, by the way, I just saw our guest walking in the front door. I did. But as he kind of wends his way here, I'll say also here that coming up on Monday, April 21st,
Patriots Day.
That is Patriots Day, and in addition to the Boston Marathon, there are a couple of other nice options that you might want to try out. One is at 10:45 a.m. It's the annual Patriots Day observation on the Cambridge Common, where the veterans folks get together. I think Mark McGovern is giving some of the words on that. It's the birthplace of the United States Army, right there. So it's
a really nice event.
It is a really nice event. Also, just to sort of pitch some of my own little side activities. That same day, if at 9 o'clock you want to meet me down at Jamaica Plain at the Forest Hills Tea Station, me and my friend Mike Stadelmeyer, we lead a marathon day hike or walk, whatever you want to call it, from the Forest Hills Station to Heartbreak Hill in Newton.
Oh.
So we go there from 9 a.m. We try and get there more or less when the lead runners are coming through.
And you get to see them.
And we do. So it's
and then you walk back?
And then we went back to, well, or you take the tea back. I mean, of course, last year it was a little more exciting than anybody wanted. So I did take the tea back and was actually under Copley Square when all the commotion happened. And we had to get evacuated out of the subway. So that wasn't so much
that's
fun.
scary.
And it was pretty scary. And we hope that we won't have to any kind of repeat of that. So anyway, that was, so that's what's coming up here. I'll say maybe some.
Hey, did you get sworn in last night?
Why would I be?
The Central Square, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, there's
blah,
no
blah.
swearing in.
Oh, no.
No,
But
no.
tell people what you're in.
Well, I was.
Oh, here's our, tell people while our special guest comes in.
Dennis is coming around here right now. I was appointed
Come on
one
in.
of 9 appointees to the Central Square Advisory Committee. It's actually for me a reappointment. I believe there's only 2 people who are continuing from the past, so we've got 7 new appointees, some of whom I've never met, don't even know, and I actually feel that's one of the most exciting things of all, is that we're getting new blood getting involved in civic things, including some of the appointees to this committee. So we haven't met yet, but hopefully we will soon.
I can't wait to hear all about it.
We are, well.
And Robert, I don't know if you noticed while you were talking, but we have our special guest here.
Hey Dennis, how you doing?
Good to see you. Good to see
All
you,
right.
Susan.
This is our vice mayor. How many people get to be vice mayor in their first day in office? Huh? How many? Have you figured it out? Did you do research on
I
it?
have not.
We have to do research on that, Robert. The very first day he was elected to the city council, he was elected vice mayor.
Well, now,
That's-
we don't want to dwell on this issue because it wasn't the nicest event of all, but
No,
it's
but-
often been said that the person who becomes vice mayor is the one who played a pivotal role in the election of the mayor. So unless you convince me otherwise, I'm going to continue on in the belief that you played a pivotal role.
Well, I will say this, that I urge my colleagues to elect the mayor on the day of the inauguration.
Actually, I remember you saying that to me a week before the inauguration day that was your goal.
And so we were able to accomplish that goal, and we've been doing an enormous amount of work over the last 2.5, 3 months now.
Well, that's what we want to know about.
Yes.
We want to know all about it. Move on in closer and
All right.
say hello to people. Oops.
So I'm actually just coming over from a committee hearing on poverty.
Oh, this is the Human Services,
Yes.
and I'm a little confused by the names of the committees because they merged them all. So I think that's what Human Services and Veterans.
Veterans, that's right.
I think the real marathon, I suppose the marathon title is the one. It's like the Neighborhood and Long-Term Planning, Arts Celebration, and Supermarket Shopping Committee or whatever. It goes on and on.
We have a lot of committees. I mean, we reduced the number from 18 to 11.
11, yeah.
11. So I wanted to reduce it down to 7, but it didn't happen.
Before we start the work
Yeah.
discussion, tell us the personal stuff. Are you liking it? What's it like being on the city council?
So, I enjoy working with my colleagues. I think that we've been trying really hard to get to work and to reach compromise on some
Yep.
very difficult issues. I enjoy helping our residents and folks in our community. And, it's been an incredible, learning experience for me.
What's a typical day like?
A typical
We
day.
have no idea, so tell
Well-
that person right there.
So yesterday, typical day.
Okay.
So typical days, I wake up
Yesterday
early.
was not a typical day.
No,
Dennis.
well, it was not. But I feel like we've been having a lot of
Every day
days
is
like
like that,
yesterday. Yeah. Last week we had a number of committee hearings that went.
Okay, so you get up in the morning.
You get up in the morning. You get the kids ready for school,
Yeah.
and you take them to school. And I take my usual stroll from Pine Street over to Citizens Bank, where my law practice is located.
Okay.
I bounce between there and City Hall during the day at several meetings. I drink quite a bit of coffee during the day during these meetings, and you prepare for your council meeting. I'm very fortunate that I have several interns working with me. One is a high school intern, and I have a law school intern, a third-year Harvard Law student,
Right.
who helps me, review material on zoning issues. Yesterday's major issue was the master plan. Extremely complicated issue. Just going through the statute is complicated, and we were, looking particularly for the enforcement mechanism in that statute. And it was interesting that we were able to find out that that the city may consider zoning, but doesn't necessarily have to enforce it, the master plan as part of its zoning. And I thought that was an interesting part of the statute, and I guess it's part of the reason why it's now sitting in the Senate, in the Senate and the state legislature, and they're looking to amend it to provide more enforceability. So, but you know, it's gratifying. I mean, you get to hear issues in our community. I think what we try to do is to make sure that an issue such as the master plan doesn't polarize, you know, our community. Because if you look at, you know, the spirit of all the groups that are involved, you know, we agree on many of the same things. And, you know, one of the major issues is how do we create more housing? If you look right across the street, that's a
Or in
potential
Central
housing
Square.
site,
Yep.
right? Crest Diagnostics. So,
Yeah.
you know, we really
That
have to.
building's going?
It could go. It could be part of the process, you know, and it's something that we have to look at.
I think the Quest properties, there was a significant purchase price, and the people who bought it are people who are movers. They're not just going to sit on the property for the next 30 years. They're going to try and make something happen. And it's just a question of what.
Right.
So finish the personal stuff. So what happens then?
So, you know, you
See, we
get.
asked him about personal stuff, and he goes on about the master
I know,
plan.
he's working. He's working. It's all about work.
You get home. This morning I did something very fun.
Yeah.
I got in my 66 Mustang convertible.
I love it.
And I took it to the shop in Everett. And I walked from the shop. I have to rebuild the transmission, unfortunately.
Oh,
But
man.
You yourself were
every
doing
year,
it?
no, I dropped it off at a transmission. But every summer I do something to it, you know. And so I walked from the auto repair shop to Malden Center, and I jumped on the Orange Line.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of talk about, you know, putting more money into transportation infrastructure. I got on the train and I looked around and I said, this is a very old train.
This is a very old train.
And so I took the train all the way to Central Square, I took the Orange Line to downtown crossing, and I jumped on the Red Line. And you know, one of the big issues that comes up around this master plan and housing in our city is the need for us to invest more in public infrastructure, and this is a critical need. But is it something that we should sit around and wait for?
You're working
state
again.
legislature? There I go again. See that?
Well, actually, you know, one of the first things in my list of, you know, our sort of to grill the guests here, you know, I sort of I actually looked up some of the things you wrote as a candidate, and actually amongst and it's interesting because I have to say, as an observer, as the ultimate city council observer, you're actually addressing the things you talked about as a candidate. They
Right.
seem to be very much front and center, and I'll just sort of list a few. One was access to jobs,
Yes.
local jobs, and I think, what did you say? Was it the previous meeting? Something like, I'm going to, you know, live and die by this.
Yeah, that's
the
my
success
issue.
of this
That's my
issue.
issue, yeah.
You know, and it's an important issue. It's a difficult issue.
Right.
So we
too.
want to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
We definitely want to touch upon that. You also talk about STEM education. Absolutely. When we talk about the Foundry thing, you were on that. There are a few other things: middle income housing, public transportation, infrastructure improvements. Bingo. There you go. So.
So you're doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing good. And I just on a personal note, I will mention this. I was in Washington D.C. this past weekend for my college roommate's wedding, and I flew out on Friday, and I actually screwed up. I had something on the schedule, and I didn't show up.
Yeah.
And so I had to call Monday morning and apologize. But you know, it happens because you schedule so many different
yeah.
events. But I had the chance to go to Annapolis, and my wife came and met me, and we went to a wedding. And as I walked around the town, it reminded me a lot of the architecture that we see here in Cambridge. And in Washington, D.C., when I attended Howard University, much of 14th and U Street quarter was burnt down.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing a revitalization of that area, and you're seeing density, and you're seeing, you know, small retail, and you're seeing, you know, folks that would never venture into that neighborhood coming in. And,
Yeah.
you know, and as you know, they call that gentrification, but, you know, there've been some very positive changes. And so when I look at Central Square, I look at an area that needs a little bit of help. You know, it's come a long way, but it's not exactly where we want it to be. And you know, we don't have, for example, you know, we don't have a restaurant for families.
We used to.
like an SNS, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So, before I forget, I didn't get to see my kids all weekend. So yesterday I called my wife, and I knew I was going to have a long meeting. I said, can you bring the kids down here so that I can say hello to them?
Yep.
So they got a chance to go on the floor. My son actually wanted to sit behind me, but out of respect for Sandra, I didn't ask her if my kids would sit in the
Well, they
back.
do become a part of that life.
Yeah,
Sandra is Sandra Albana, who is basically the boss of the Sullivan Chamber at City Hall.
Right.
You know, she's the head of the city council staff, and pretty much she rules the roost.
That's right, she does.
Well, it does get in the kids' blood, though. When they're there and it's like they're part of it, and it sinks in.
Well, when I woke my son up this morning for school, he says to me, Dad, he says, you seemed very passionate about something last night.
That's great. For them to see that is wonderful.
Well, actually, I remember, I mean, the age differential isn't so great, but I remember the younger versions of Michael and Walter Sullivan, the twins, as people used to call them, the twin sons of, multiple times Mayor Walter Sullivan, when they would be young fellas, hanging around, City Hall.
Right.
So in many ways, it's appropriately called the Sullivan Chamber. It's just like the Sullivan family grew up in there, it seems.
And what was interesting? So my over the weekend, my children stayed with my sister-in-law, who lives over by Alewife, right at the edge of Wrench Ave and Alewife Road Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you know, there's a lot of discussion now going on about development in that area, and I'm not a big fan of cheap quality housing, poor quality housing. And so, when I talked to my sister-in-law, I said, please make sure that the kids aren't, hanging around on Ridge Ave, because it's a very dangerous intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of my interns last year almost was almost struck and killed. Ben Saunders on our White Brook Parkway. So a lot of the issues that are being raised about this area are very serious issues. And do we need to improve pedestrian walkways? Absolutely. And do we need to take a strong look at traffic in that area? Absolutely. And I think you mentioned in your website that it's an interesting place because it's an area where a lot of other cities and towns and commuters that come from those cities and towns cut through our city, and so they create a lot of the traffic in many ways, and I can understand the frustration, but we've got some pretty serious and major decisions to make, and that's what we're elected to do, right?
It's especially difficult when you talk about things up around Alewife Brook Parkway, because it's not a City of Cambridge road. The thing is that
it's a state road.
Yeah, this is Route 2. And, so it's pretty much up to, I think it's an MDC, or I guess we used to call it MDC, probably now. Those roads are now part of what the Mass Highway now, I think, right? So Cambridge can influence things, can push and press, but the thing is, it's not like we can just let's just rebuild the bridge or add lanes, whatever. It's just not for us to do. Right. So there's a lot of cajoling that's involved. The same thing was true along Fresh Pond Parkway. As you get closer to the Charles River, there were a lot of really hazardous pedestrian situations, and places where a lot of motor vehicle accidents have taken place as well. And the best we could ever really do is just lobby for change, because we couldn't just go in there and do our Cambridge-style traffic calming things,
So are your kids becoming researchers for you? They're telling you what the issues are and what happened this weekend that you need to fix?
Right. So my son came over and whispered to me last night. He said, make sure you tell him about the cars not speeding going down School Street.
Exactly. Isn't that great? Oh, I'd be so proud of them. Yeah. All right, let's talk about work now.
Sure. So we want to talk about the early initiatives?
Talk about whatever you want.
Okay.
You can start.
Okay. So early initiatives, we got the Foundry issue moving. We really we tried really hard to make sure that one of the uses that we dedicated the entire building to STEAM-related activities.
Well, give us an update. The last time we talked about the Foundry on this show, there was going to be the city council meeting that dealt just with it. And there was, it actually, as we understand it, it opened up the debate about what should be in there. Right. So what's happened since then?
Well, so we came to an agreement that we would begin the capital improvement process, and we
Which means
appropriated
saving
about
money for that specific site.
$6 million to get us going with the capital improvements. So we're going to need somewhere around, 18 to 22 million in the end.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out how we can partner up with the CRA and
Which is not,
responsible on
that's not an absolutely settled
No,
fact, but it
no.
seems like it was described to me that things are trending strongly in that direction.
Right, they're trending strongly, and we're also looking at other partnerships that they're going to report. The city manager's office will report back to the council on the feasibility of this partnership and looking at other ways of funding the development of the building. But I would like to see it as a space that the community can greatly benefit from STEM and STEAM-related education. I had an opportunity to tour the Harvard Innovation Lab, and as I toured this lab, I said, wouldn't it be wonderful for us to have something like this for Cambridge residents, whether you're a senior or you're a young person or you're an adult, where you can have some contact, and it can help you begin to make the connection with the lot of the companies that we have in Kendall Square. So I'm excited about the opportunity. When we went to the National League of Cities, there was no conversation whatsoever.
Tell us what that is.
So the National League of Cities is a conference, a national conference held in Washington, D.C., where elected officials, mostly municipally or locally elected officials, go to discuss initiatives and how to receive federal funding. They discuss education and several other issues, climate change. And one of the issues that was not discussed as much as we discuss it here in our city was STEAM-related education. So, as much as we may want to be critical of our city is one of the best cities in the country. And we have to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah.
And can we do better, and can we perfect ourselves? Absolutely. But it's a wonderful city, and we really offer our residents a lot.
One of the more interesting things to me on the Foundry issue was how, I think when the donation from Alexandria Properties, because it was part of a zoning mitigation deal, I think there was, it was the community uses, I think people would think it would be something more akin to what happens at East End House today, right? So an extension like that. But then once it was there, once the property was sort of in the city's arsenal, a lot of people started chiming in. So I heard it was going to be an arts center, and then became STEM, and then we joined them, told it's STEAM. But I think when we were having the city council meeting here, maybe it was even the first one, it was Mark McGovern tossed in some of the notions about having things as part of early childhood education initiatives. So, it's like the more time passed, the more people were sort of trying to get a little piece of the action.
Right.
So is it moving the way you want it to move?
It is moving the way we want it to move. We're going to have another difficult conversation probably in the fall.
On programming.
And on programming, exactly. And additional capital improvements that need to be made to the property. What I try to do is as part of the compromise, is to urge my colleagues to look at other spaces for, let's say, example, the universal pre-K program. So as we talk to developers and negotiate with developers, we can begin to have this conversation about setting aside maybe 5,000, 10,000 square feet in anticipation of a citywide universal pre-K program. So, for example, the courthouse, which is a very hot issue right now, I would go to the developer and say, hey, look, aside from the housing needs that we need to meet, we want some space for early childhood education. So that's one area of the city. In Central Square, as we talk to developers, we need some space for early childhood education. So when the issue comes up after the task force completes its report, we're in a better position to know where we can begin to locate some of these centers around the city.
Right.
Good.
I'm going to have to just intervene here only because we have to wind down this half-hour segment, and we'll be back, though, in 3 minutes.
So 3-minute commercial. You'll stay with us, right? Because there's so much to talk about. This is Cambridge Inside.
And out.
See ya.